Hey hipsters, it's Blake back at it again. Best mustache in the game. Old Man Magic's here to brew another deck with you. Tuesday Brewsday, we're back at it again. And this time we're doing another Dominaria United Commander as this set's still pretty fresh, so lots of legends to pick from. And today I decided to pick from one that I kind of highlighted in my Commander set review. If you haven't seen that video, check it out. I go over all 75 Commanders in the entire set. And this one particularly interested me. It's King Darien 48. I figured out that's what that Roman numeral is. And I think that this might be a pretty interesting deck build for some people. I tried to keep this list down to a fair budget. A lot of the cards in this deck, there's only a few that exceed the $10 mark, and the vast majority of cards are under the $5 mark. So I try to keep this on a pretty focused and narrow sort of idea of trying to keep this somewhat budget. If you like this idea, if you'd like to see more budget builds from me, maybe like an ultra budget build, I've definitely done some bulk builds in person, like in paper, where I go through just bulk boxes and make decks, and they've been very successful. So yeah, if that's something you're interested in, let me know. I definitely like building on a budget. It's fun for me. So yeah, that's definitely something I'm interested. I'm trying this out to kind of get the feeler for what you guys think of this. But regardless, I think this deck will be very effective, even though I've put it on somewhat of a budget restriction. I think King Darien 48 is going to be, moving forward, one of, if not the best, Selesnya token commanders. We've typically had like Reese the Redeemed and Tristanis and stuff like that, but I honestly think King Darien's probably better, and I'm going to kind of get into why. But this deck is nothing too flashy here. It's about what you'd expect. It's a Selesnya tokens deck. It's kind of, a pretty tried out archetype, but I think we might have some interesting things going on here that most other decks don't. So let's get into why I think King Darien is good and into the deck tech. So King Darien 48, he's a 1 green and a white for a 2/3 legendary creature human soldier. Other creatures you control get +1/+1. You can pay 3 green and a white, put a 1/1 counter on this, and then you create a 1/1 white soldier creature token. And you can sacrifice Darien to give your creature tokens hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Okay, so this is pretty unique for a Selesnya tokens, Selesnya tokens sort of commander in a few ways. The first one that's not very unique is the Anthem effect, giving all your other creatures +1/+1 is not anything that we haven't seen before by any means. But having it on a pretty efficient rate, 3 mana for an Anthem like that is already a pretty reasonable rate that you would take. So that's really good. Makes all of our random creature tokens we have lying around bigger. That's good. We need that. It's got a nice little mana sink on it. For 5 mana, we can make a 1/1 and put a 1/1 counter on him. So as we get into the late game and we start running out of things to do, or we need to trigger certain effects based on making tokens, then we could pay 5 mana to make a 2/2 essentially, which is really nice. And then probably the most important words on this card is the last ability to me, where we can sacrifice King Darien to give our creature tokens hexproof and indestructible until end of turn, which is really, really nice. We have some board wipe protection built into our commander here. That's always the plight of tokens decks, is getting board wiped as you build up your board and go wide and you start solidifying, the dominant board position, and then somebody comes in with a board wipe and resets you, and then, you've expended a lot of resources to get where you were, and now you're kind of back to square one in a way. So I really like the last ability on King Darien. So what kind of excited me about this card is mostly that last ability, and then the first ability is really nice as well. And then the middle ability, the mana sink to make some tokens, is not nothing. It's definitely appreciated. As like I was saying, sometimes you can run out of resources in your tokens decks. And this will help you protect that on 2 axes. 1, protecting your board, and 2, giving you more tokens when you need things to do. So yeah, I really like King Darien 48. I think he's got a real nice sort of tokens matters package built into him. So yeah, we'll go ahead and get into the deck here and start talking about the kind of main cards in the deck. So first off, we're going to talk about an absolute monster in the format, and that's Adeline Resplendent Cathar. 1 white for a star 4. It's a vigilant creature, and its power is equal to the number of creatures you control. So generally, that's going to be huge. And whenever you attack for each opponent, you create 3 1/1 white human creature tokens that are tapped and attacking that player or planeswalker they control. And if you have your commander out, which you most likely will, then those 1/1s are obviously going to be bumped into 2/2s. So yeah, Adeline, just a really big threat. Just makes way too much material for the mana. Helps influence our plan by giving us a ton of tokens. Notably, the tokens don't go away at the end of combat. We just get to keep them if they survive combat. So yeah, really like Adeline. This card is always an overperforming, always a threat at any table I've played at. Avacyn's Pilgrim. It's a 1 green mana, 1/1 creature that just taps for white mana. Mana dorks are just good in Commander. I think they're, if anything, they're a bit underplayed, to be honest. And this is one that will help us fix as well, as it costs green to make, and you tap it for white, so it gives us both of our. So it ensures that we have our other color as well. So Avacyn's Pilgrim, just good mana rip. Avenger of Zendikar, a Commander classic. 5 green for a 5/5. When it enters the battlefield, you create a 0/1 plant creature token for each land you control. And when you play a land, all your plants get a 1/1 counter. Just makes us so much material all at once. And our commander already pumps these creature tokens and can protect them for later. So yeah, Avenger of Zendikar, really nice. Always obviously a classic landfall sort of card. Often forgot about in token strategies specifically. And it feels like it's a good home here, as we also have a lot of land ramp that we will get into later. Beast Whisperer, another classic, 2 green for Elf Druid. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you draw a card. We have 26 creatures and 27, including our commander. We're just going to play quite a few creatures in the deck, even though we're a tokens-based deck. So it's just going to help us have things to do, basically. Benny Brax Zoologist, in a similar vein to Beast Whisperer. It's a 3 and a white for a 3/2 Elf Druid. It has Convoke, which means you can tap your creatures to help cast it. At the beginning of each end step, if you create a token this turn, you draw a card. So we hope to make a token every one of our turns at the very least, let alone at our opponent's turns. So yeah, this is just going to, once again, keep us moving, keep us having gas and everything. This card's $11. It's kind of on the apps. I think this is the most expensive card in the deck. I think I have one other card over $10. But this card's definitely worth it. Any sort of tokens deck you have moving forward, you will want to play this card in it. It's even easy to cast in like 3+ color decks. So yeah, Benny Brax is definitely one you'll be happy to have for your future as well. So yeah, great card. Super, super powerful. Champion of Lamholt. 1 green for a human warrior. It's a 1/1. With creatures with power less than this can't block creatures you control. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you put a 1/1 counter on this. So ideally, we're making tons of creatures, and this thing's going to get a ton of counters on it. And then plus, our commander also gives it a nice little extra bump on top of it, too. Just allows all of our creatures to be threats. All of our little dorks that might get eaten in combat suddenly just can't be blocked. So Champion of Lamholt's always a pretty scary card when it sits on the battlefield. Next up, another card I've been trying to kind of fit in more places. It's Crashing Drawbridge. It's a 2-mana artifact creature. It's a wall. It has Defender. It's a 0/4. I don't know if I mentioned that. Tap. Creatures you control gain haste until end of turn, which is all creatures you control, including tokens and whatever else. So there'll definitely be turns where we spew out a bunch of creature tokens on our turn, and it would be really nice to be able to give them haste, give any sort of big flyer that we make haste. This should just be a nice little haste enabler, flexible card for our deck. Green and white don't typically have very many ways to give haste, let alone on a mass scale, which is how we really want it. We don't really want Lightning Greaves and stuff where we just give like one creature haste. It's not really that important to this deck, I don't think, as we want to go wide. We want to make a lot of creatures. Defiler of Faith, new card, 3 white for a 5/5 Phyrexian Human. It has Vigilance. Has additional cost to cast white permanent spells. You may pay 2 life. Basically, it just changes. When you cast a white permanent spell, you can pay 1 Phyrexian white instead of one of the whites at its cost. And then whenever you cast a white permanent spell, you create a 1/1 soldier creature token. So yeah, we're definitely going to be triggering that last ability quite a bit. We got a lot of white permanents in the deck. We want more tokens, so that definitely helps out there. And this will definitely help make our mana a lot easier as well. Helps us make all of our white spells cheaper, all of our white permanent spells cheaper. So yeah, definitely seems like a good fit for this deck. Definitely want to try this card out. Endray's Forerunners, classic finisher here. 5 green for a 7/7. Vigilance, Trample, Haste. When it enters the battlefield, other creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain Vigilance and Trample. This just allows us to help us kill people, get rid of them. Sometimes if we are wide enough, this can just remove all the rest of the players, especially if they've lost some life previously. So yeah, just a really good overrun finisher for us. Essence Warden, it's a 1 green mana 1/1. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life. We're going to gain a ton of life off of this. We're going to play a ton of creatures. Wherever our opponents play creatures, we gain life. Normally, I don't like having like cards that are just dedicated to life gain in decks. But it's not going to hurt here for sure. We're going to gain so much life on this because we can enable this so much. So it's just going to give us a lot of survivability and such. So you're going to see a few other cards similar to Essence Warden here. More Soul Sisters in the deck. Eternal Witness, staple of the format. 1 green for a 2/1 human shaman. When it enters the battlefield, you get a card back from your graveyard to your hand. Just good to have recursion in your decks. Good to be able to get the best thing that you've played in the game again. Just great card. Jahir, Friend of the Forest. 2 and a green for a 2/3. Tokens you control have tap, add a green. So this is really nice. We can use our tokens that we previously have lying around for previous turns if we don't really feel like attacking with them. We can use them to help kind of activate King Darien's ability to make more tokens that then we have more mana for later. Notably, this effect adds it to the creatures, so any other tokens that you've had lying out previously from previous turns can just immediately tap for mana. So if you play this on a later turn when you already have creature tokens out, this card can be kind of free in a way. So yeah, I think Jahir is very powerful. Ideally, you'd be using this card with more non-creature or more tokens that are not creatures. But I think it's definitely powerful enough in our deck as we have a mana sink right in our command zone to make more tokens to make more mana. So yeah, Jahir seems very good for our deck. Maya, Bredegard Protector, 2 green, white for a 2/3. Other creatures you control get +1/+1. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you make a 1/1 white human creature token. Sometimes I see people running this as a tokens sort of commander, but it's not the tokens commander for our deck, obviously. I much prefer King Darien, but this will still be a great role player in our deck. Still does all the things we want, gives us an anthem, makes more tokens for us whenever we play lands, which we plan on doing, hopefully more than once a turn. So yeah, seems great for our deck. Does all the things we want to do, even though it's a little overcosted. 5 mana is quite a bit, but we'll take it. Seems good. Mentor of the Meek, 2 and a white for a 2/2 human soldier. Another classic here. Whenever another creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 1 if you do draw a card. We're planning on making a lot of 1/1/2/2s in this deck, so yeah, should trigger a lot. Should help us have things to do. Prava of the Steel Legion, 2 and a white for a 1/4 cat soldier. As long as it's your turn, creature tokens you control get +1/+4, so makes them really hard to kill in combat. And then you can also pay 3 and a white to create a 1/1 white soldier creature token. Just a good anthem, keeps our creatures alive, allows them to swing in pretty freely, and has an extra mana sink on it to help us make more creatures, maybe if our commander's died and it's gotten expensive or something. Reclamation Sage, another classic. I'm not going to read it. It's a creature that's interaction, so works with all of our other permanence matters sort of things. Rumor Gatherer, 1 white for a 2/1. Alliance, whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you scry 1. If this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, you draw a card. So this will just allow us a lot of filtering through our deck to get the things we want. And it'll also still give us some card draw here and there too, as we ideally want to make more than 1 token in a turn. So yeah, Rumor Gatherer seems great. Sakura Tribe Elder. It's a 2 mana 1/1, and you can sack search library for a basic land card, tap, put in play tapped. Just mana ramp on a creature at a perfectly acceptable rate. We'll take it. Scoot Swarm, the menace of some standard players for sure. Not for any longer, of course. 2 and a green for a 1/1. It has landfall. When a land enters the battlefield under your control, you make a 1/1 green insect, and if you have 6 or more lands, you create a token that's a copy of this. This just makes so many creatures so quickly, especially since we have ways to play more than 1 land in a turn with our mana ramp. Ideally, I would recommend playing this card once you are hitting 6 lands, so that way you can immediately get a copy. So that way that makes this card a lot more sticky. Because if you just play this out on like turn 3 and then somebody removes it, you kind of didn't really do anything. This thing's really easy to kill. And you don't want to make just another 1/1. You ideally want to start making the clones, so that way they make more and more clones and more clones and more clones. So yeah, if you're not familiar with Scoot Swarm, definitely sequence it to play this on the turn that you're going to hit your 6 lands. That way they have to kill 2 Scoot Swarms if they want to get rid of the effect entirely. Shalai, Voice of Plenty, 3 and a white for a 3/4 Flying Angel. You and planeswalkers you control and other creatures you control have hexproof. And you can pay 4 green to put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. So just good board protection for us. Allows us another mana sink here to help grow our board that we have. So yeah, just a good card. Good protection for our board. Soul Warden, it's basically the same thing as Essence Warden. Gives us life as we have creatures come in. Same reason Essence Warden's good. Sun Titan, it's a classic. You want to put it in your white decks. It's great here. Torrens Fist of the Angels. 1 green-white for a 2/2 human cleric. It has training, which means whenever this creature attacks with another creature with greater power, this gets a 1/1 counter. And then whenever you cast a creature spell, you get a 1/1 green and white human creature token with training. Same thing, training makes them bigger. Torrens is great, just makes a ton of creatures whenever you cast creatures and they get bigger. So yeah, great token maker here. Toski, Bearer of Secrets, 3 and a green for a 1/1, can't be countered, indestructible. It attacks each turn, each combat if able, and whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. Just keeps us fueled, draws us tons of cards, hard to kill. Toski's always great. $11 here, or $7 here, so kind of up there a little bit in price, but definitely worth it. Toski goes in a lot of green decks, so you won't be disappointed in picking this one up. Tristani Discordant, 3 and green-white for a 1/4 legendary creature Dryad. Other creatures you control get +1/+1. Whenever it enters the battlefield, you create 2 1/1 white soldiers with lifelink. At the beginning of your end step, each player gains control of all creatures they own. Last ability is obviously not very relevant, but it's 5 mana, Anthem, and it makes 2 more bodies with it. Seems great for our deck. A little bit overcosted. 5 mana is kind of a lot for the package here. But it seems worth it in the same way that Maya was worth it. Welcoming Vampire, 2 and a white for a vampire, 2/3 flyer. Whenever 1 or more other creatures with power 2 or less enter the battlefield under your control, you draw a card. This ability only triggers once each turn. So this essentially does a very similar thing to Benny Brax. It's going to draw us a card each turn, hopefully. So yeah, just great. We love to see it. So we'll move on to the sorceries next. It primarily consists of mana ramp and then a few sort of recursion-y spells, and then a little bit of card draw. Austere Command, classic commander board wipe. Obviously, we're usually going to wipe big creatures and then either artifacts or enchantments, as we don't have very many big creatures. And, we can get rid of whatever artifacts and enchantments are causing us issues. Balagad Recovery. It's a modal DFC. Friendly reminder to play modal DFCs in your deck because they're great. This one, I put in almost all my green decks. Gets me the best thing back from my graveyard on the front side. Play this card in your green decks. By invitation only, this is a super sweet board wipe for tokens decks. 3 white for a sorcery. Choose a number between 0 and 13. Each player sacrifices that many creatures. So when you're go wide tokens deck, you're going to have the most creatures and the most expendable creatures in the form of weak tokens or whatever. So you'll get to wipe your opponent's board and keep the majority of your board. So yeah, great board wipe for tokens matters decks. Amaria's Call. 4 white for a sorcery. Create 2 4/4 white angel warrior creature tokens with flying. Non-angel creatures you control gain indestructible to end of turn. And it's a modal DFC. Backside's just an untapped white source. This card's good. Makes 2 good tokens for us for 7 mana, which is not the greatest rate. Also makes our non-angels indestructible, so we can swing in freely with the things that we can attack with that turn. But yeah, I mean, like the same reason all other modal DFCs are great. This is just a land drop when you don't need the front side of the card, and when you need the front side of the card, it's awesome because it was just a land anyway. Farseek, classic ramp card. Play it in your green decks. Harvest Season, another ramp card. This one's interesting, though. I don't normally like this card, but I think it's going to be a good fit here. It's 2 and a green for a sorcery. Search your library for up to X basic land cards, where X is the number of tapped creatures you control, and then you put those cards on the battlefield tapped, then you shuffle your library. If this ever gets us 2 basics, we're pretty happy with that. But a lot of times, I would feel like in this deck, you could get a lot more. So yeah, Harvest Season seems excellent for our deck. We want to have a lot of creatures out. We want to attack with them and get them tapped. So this is going to ramp us a ton for just 3 mana, ideally. So yeah, Harvest Season seems like a good fit for our deck. Nature's Lore, one of the best ramp spells in the format. Excuse me. Play it in your green decks. Rampant Growth, same thing. Savine's Reclamation, Favorite white card. I put it in all my white decks. Just great recursion, great value on a card. Just great. Gets us back all sorts of things, all sorts of value. Sylvan Reclamation, great draw spell for this deck. 3 green for a sorcery. Draw a card for each creature you control. Ideally, that's going to be a ton. Ferocious, you gain 4 life for each creature you control with power 4 or greater. It's probably not going to be very much life gain from this card. Just going to draw a ton of cards. 3 visits, it's the same thing as Nature's Lore. It's mana ramp in your green deck. Play it. All right, let's go to instants. This is mostly interaction sort of spells, whether that's removal or board protection, which is very important for us. Even though our commander does it, we still want board protection, as we have plenty of cards that aren't tokens. Obviously, all these creatures that we have here. So yeah, we'll have definitely a decent amount of, definitely a couple spells for dedicated for protection here, because that's mainly how our deck loses, if we get board wiped or set back a ton like that. But we also have some pretty powerful token makers in this section too. So let's get into it. First is Beast Within, classic staple of the format. Removes whatever is a problem. 3 mana is not the most efficient rate for removal, but when it catches whatever is the problem, definitely worth playing. Call the Coppercoats. This is a pretty powerful token maker. It's 2 and a white for an instant. It has Strive. The spell costs 1 and a white more to cast for each target beyond the first, so you can copy it for 2 mana basically. Choose any number of target opponents. You create a X11 human soldier creature tokens, where X is the number of creatures those opponents control. So just make a ton of tokens. Whoever has the most creatures out of your opponents, you just get that many 1/1s, and then you can even copy it if you want to leave up extra mana. This is good alongside of our commanders. We can hold up 5 mana to threaten an activation for it, and then our opponents might think that that's all we got going on, and then bam, all of a sudden we copied, cast and copied a Call of the Coppercoats targeting 2 different people, and then we just made a giant board on the end step, so then we're about to untap with a bajillion 2/2s. So very powerful token maker. Generous Gift, same thing as Beast Within. Grand Crescendo, this is a pretty interesting card. It's X white for an instant. You create X11 green and white citizen creature tokens, and the more important part, creatures you control gain indestructible to end of turn. We don't really get 2 mana give your creatures indestructible effects, which this is sneakily that. But also, if you have extra mana lying around, you can just make some extra creature tokens too. Why not? You know. So yeah, excellent board protection and token generator. Kabir Takedown. It's a modal DFC. They're excellent. This one is removal on the front side. So yeah, and it's not even that inefficiently costed. It's a pretty fair rate on the front side. So play modal DFCs. March of Multitudes. X green white for an instant with Convoke. And then you create X11 white soldier creature tokens with lifelink. Another great one to leave up alongside of our commander for the same reason. They might think we're just holding up 5 mana to, activate our commander or whatever. But then if we need to or want to, if nobody's threatening to wipe the board or anything, or even if they are, we can, tap all the creatures we got, including any extra lands we have lying around, and just cast a giant March of the Multitudes and make an army of lifelinkers. Seems great. Seems like that's what we want to do. Nature's Claim. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. Its controller gains 4 life. Just one of the best removal spells in the format. There's so many artifacts and enchantments running around nowadays. Mana rocks to really powerful enchantments, great hinges, bolus of citadels, you name it. You can just get rid of them for 1 mana and all they get is stupid 4 life. Excellent removal spell. Rite of Harmony. This is a pretty interesting one. Green and a white for an instant. Whenever a creature or enchantment enters the battlefield under your control this turn, you draw a card, and it has flashback for 2 green and a white. This card seems great to pair up alongside of any sort of effect that's going to make us a large number of tokens, whether that's Call the Coppercoats or March of the Multitudes or whatever. And we're just going to draw a bajillion cards. And then we even have flashback on it, so later on in the game when we start running out of things to do, we can flash it back and do a similar trick with maybe less tokens, but it's an effect that we wouldn't have had anyway. So yeah, this card seems excellent for the deck for sure. Rootborn Defenses, classic board white protection. 2 and a white for an instant. You populate, and then creatures you control get indestructible till end of turn. We don't have like that many creature tokens that are like that amazing to populate. Most of them are 1/1s, as you've probably seen. But yeah, this is a reasonable budget board white protection spell. So yeah, Rootborn Defenses seems just fine. Second Harvest. Glad this card's much more reasonably costed now. It's 2 green for an instant. For each creature token you control, create a token that's a copy of that permanent. So this is a great one to pair up alongside of Rite of Harmony and such. But yeah, this helps us just build up a giant board. Once again, instant speed, very important for large token generators to be instant speed, so you can see what's going on before you decide if you want to deploy more creature tokens, and then you can also kind of surprise your opponents with a bunch of creatures they weren't expecting to be able to attack. Secure the wastes, 1 and an X to just make X 1/1s. Just seems good. Same reason that the other big ones like March of the Multitudes are good. Swords to Plowshares, great removal spell. Unbreakable Formation, another good board wipe protection spell. It's a 3 mana instant. Creatures you control get indestructible. But if you cast it during your main phase, you get to put a 1/1 counter on each creature, each of those creatures, and then they gain vigilance. So you can also grow your board with this one if you want to swing in for a pretty big attack. And then you also still get to play defense because they have vigilance. So not my favorite board wipe protection spell, but on a budget, it's definitely fair, definitely reasonable. We have a few artifacts here. Since we're a green deck, we don't really have to run like artifact mana ramp, but we are still playing Soul Ring, obviously. But we do have a few artifacts here that are worth playing. The first one's Idol of Oblivion. Pretty consistent card draw here. It's a 2 mana artifact. You can tap to draw a card, but you can only activate it if you've created a token this turn, which we plan on doing a lot. And then you could pay 8, tap, and sacrifice the idol to create a 10/10 colorless Eldrazi creature token. We're probably never going to do that. Just really good, consistent draw for us for just 2 mana. Oketra's Monument. It's a 3 mana legendary artifact. White creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. And whenever you cast a creature spell, you make a 1/1 white warrior creature token with vigilance. So this is going to provide us with some mana discounts. We have a pretty good amount of creatures, and half of them are white. So definitely this will give us some sort of mana discounts, but any creature we cast doesn't have to be white. Any creature we cast will get an extra token alongside of it. So that's just great. That sounds like something good we want. And especially since it's an artifact, it's more reliable to stick around than just a bunch of creatures. It just allows us to have more of a sticky board without all ending on the creature aspect of it. Skull Clamp. This one's a little awkward for the deck, but I still think it's worth running. So it's a 1 mana equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/-1, and when a equipped creature dies, you draw 2 cards. It equips for 1. Just an insanely powerful draw engine. Obviously, alongside of our commander, we won't have any 1/1 since it would make any creature we had a 1/1 a 2/2. So it makes it a little hard to kill our creatures with Skull Clamp. But anytime our commander's not out, we can start sacking our 1/1 creatures that we have lying around, which we'll have a lot of, to start drawing cards. And we can also help facilitate this by sacking our commander to then shrink our board to then Skull Clamp it. So there's definitely some play here that we have. Good. If we don't have our commander out, we might already be behind. So it is nice to have something like this that can sit around and draw us a bunch of cards when we need to, maybe later, to help catch back up. And plus, it's a good one to kind of just stick on our commander as we pass the turn. So that way, if we end up sacking it to protect our board, we still get a cash out from our commander, as our board isn't going to go anywhere if our commander's there without our commander going first. So, yeah, I like that about this card. I still think it's worth including, even though it might seem a little awkward with our commander. Sol Rings here, like I said. Strixhaven Stadium, an interesting mana rock here. It's a 3 mana artifact, taps for a colorless mana, and then you put a point counter on the Strixhaven Stadium. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to you, you remove a point counter from it. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to an opponent, you put a point counter back on this. And then if it has 10 or more point counters on them, you remove all of them, and then that player loses the game. So when this is out, if we hit opponents with 10 creatures, then we just get to kill one of them. So that just seems great for our deck. Seems like a pretty nice alternative win condition, as we can we'll have a bunch of bodies that we can throw away to help enable this. We just have to pay attention to make sure that we're not losing very many counters on this card. So yeah, just seems like a nice little mana rock that might just randomly kill somebody. So seems fun. Okay, and then lastly, I built kind of what I think is a decent mana base for a budget deck. I'm going to go ahead and remove my face here for a minute so you can see this a little better. So what I did was I kind of went through this and I made sure that none of my lands were like any more than like a couple bucks, to give you an idea of what I would kind of construct a budget mana base around, because I haven't really ever talked about that very much on the channel. For me, if I'm building like a 3-color mana base plus for a budget build, I'm willing to run a lot more tap lands than this. Try lands, any sort of land that produces more than two colors that enters tapped, I'm fine with. And I'll run I'll run like maybe 10 basics or something total in like 3+ color decks. And then as I go up colors, obviously I run less basics. But for a 2-color deck like this, I run a handful. I run like 10-ish tapped lands / fixing lands. And some of them sometimes won't even enter taps, so that's good. But yeah, this is kind of what I'm looking at for a budget mana base. Never really talked about it very much, so I thought this might be a good opportunity. So I have a handful of tap lands here. I have Arctic Treeline. I have Canopy Vista, which will sometimes enter tapped. I have Fortified Village. This one, once again, can sometimes enter tapped. Crozen Verge, Myriad Landscape. These I don't typically play in anything outside of budget, but in a budget they seem like fine ramp / fixing. Yeah, 2-color I don't feel bad about running them because a tapped colorless land is not as much of a cost in 2-color, but as soon as I'm in 3-color, I'm off these. And then Scattered Groves, a tap land that we can cycle that also has land types, pretty relevant. Selesnya Sanctuary, bounce land, allows us to bounce any modal DFCs we have lying around from earlier. Nice utility in that way. And then lastly, Windburst Kites, because it could give us some card advantage, because we'll pretty reliably attack with 3 or more creatures. So yeah, sometimes it can cheat in like a big creature like Maya or something. So those are kind of my tap lands. Then I have a handful of decent untapped lands that are good for the money right now. Battleful Promenade. This one's the Battle Bond land. Always enters untapped, basically. So that's great. Branchloft Pathway. These are the DFC lands, the ones where they're one of the 2 colors on each side. I really only play these in 2-color decks exactly. If I'm playing like an ideal mana base. As soon as I'm in 3 colors, I don't really play any of these. Just way better duels. But yeah, in 2 colors, this is great. Just gives you whatever color you need. Castle Ardenvale. This is a pretty nice one for our deck. Enters the battlefield tapped unless you control planes, which we have plenty of. It taps for a white, and you can pay 2 white and tap it to make a 1/1 white creature token. Obviously not the most powerful effect, but it's nice to have around. If our commander starts getting expensive and hard to stay on the board and we need some stuff to do, we can activate this Castle Ardenvale. And then if we have any of the things like Benny Brax or, any sort of triggers from creatures entering the battlefield, like Champion of Flameholt, where we just need that 1 extra creature to trigger some things to get some things going, then that's what Castle Ardenvale is here for. So not super flashy, but probably a pretty good role player. Command Tower, great land. Exotic Orchard, it's basically always going to produce us 1, if not both of our colors. So it's an untapped duel in that way. That's great. Gavney Township, pretty good utility land here. Taps for a colorless. You can pay 2 green and a white and tap it. Let's put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. So it allows us to grow our board on a land. Seems pretty great. Overgrown Farmland. This enters tapped unless you control 2 or more other lands. Since we're a budget deck, we aren't like trying to stay super low to the ground. So most of the time when we actually start making plays that start impacting the game a lot more, that's going to be on turn 3 and later, and that's when this is going to enter untapped. So yeah, and even on turns 1 and 2, we can afford to take a tap land most likely. So Overgrown Farmland, great dual land. Love these slow lands. Then yeah, last one we have here is War Room. Just a great utility land here. Enters untapped, taps for a colorless mana. You can pay 3 tap and pay life equal to your commander's color identity as draw a card. So we would take 2 damage and draw a card. Seems excellent. I love playing these in 1-color decks, and I'll play them in some 2-color decks, especially budget ones, since this is under $2 now. Just a great utility land. Gives us things to do when we need things to do when we're running out of time, Okay, I'm going to bring back my head again here. There we are. So in the sideboard here, what I have mostly is non-budget ads. If you are going to, upgrade this deck, then this is what I would say would be kind of more of an optimal list. This is kind of what I initially was going to run with. And then I decided, well, it might be fun to try a budget build. So I kind of took a lot of this stuff out. This is a lot of stuff that's over like $10 and such to make this deck more affordable, give you some flexibility and some options here. So first up is a Chroma's Will. It's a board wipe protection spell / a finisher. It's 4 mana. You choose 1. If you control your commander, you can choose both. Creatures you control get flying, vigilance, and double strike until end of turn, and or creatures you control get lifelink, indestructible, and protection from all colors till end of turn. So bottom mode's protection. Top mode is offensive, and you can combine them both to make sure that you get in tons of damage and gain a ton of life. Just an excellent finisher / protector. So yeah, Chroma's Will's great. Unfortunately, it's gotten close to the $10 mark, so I didn't want to include it in the deck. But yeah, seems great. Anointed Procession. Obviously, we're a tokens deck, so we'd want to play Anointed Procession if we can. Aura Mutation. This is one that if you like it, I could see it, but for me, it's just not like just not flexible enough for my liking. It's 1 and a green for an instant. You destroy an enchantment, and then you create X/1/1 Saproling creature tokens for X is the enchantment's mana value. Sure, you might be able to snag like a 4 CMC plus enchantment and then feel pretty good about it. But the fact that this card just has to sit in your hand, and then you have to find a good moment to find an enchantment that you actually want to kill and stuff, then I don't know. I don't really feel great about this card in the deck. It's just a bit too narrow for me. And then if nobody plays an enchantment, then like, what are you going to do? Oh, sorry, I skipped over my enchantment section here. Speaking of enchantments, I do have a few enchantments in the main deck. It's mostly stuff that you would expect. Cathar's Crusade just makes your board huge whenever you make more creatures, which we plan on doing a lot of. Great finisher for us. Cryptolith Rite does the same sort of thing that Jaheira does. Allows us our creatures to produce mana, so that way we can activate our commander more and stuff and produce more creatures. Divine Visitation makes all of our puny 1/1s into giant angels. Great sort of axis for our deck to attack on. So yeah, seems great for our deck. Now that it's finally under like $20 and it's down to just a clean $5-6, seems like a great include for the deck. Felidar Retreat. I love this card. Makes lots of tokens when you have lands come into play, or it can grow your board, whichever one you need. Does things when you have no board, does things when you have a board. Just a great card. Legion Loyalty, pretty fun one. It's 8 mana. Creatures you control get Myriad. So all your tokens make tokens and all that sort of stuff. You just produce a giant board that starts swinging at everybody all over the place. And then you can also, protect them if you want to, if you actually have to send some creatures that you care about into combat. So, yeah, just a really powerful card. Fun card, but just a bit overcosted at 8 mana. That being said, we're kind of looking for different points of attack since we're a little bit on a budget. So this is a good option for us. Legion's Landing. That's a 1-mana enchantment. Enters the battlefield. You make a 1/1 vampire with lifelink. And then whenever you attack with 3 or more creatures, you flip it into lands. Taps for 1 white mana, or you can pay 2 and a white and tap it to make a 1/1 white vampire with lifelink. It's just mana ramp for 1 mana, basically. Because we're going to be able to reliably attack with 3 creatures pretty quick. So for just 1 mana, we flip it. We get a land out of it pretty quickly. And we just get a random token. And the backside's not even that bad. It's very similar to Castle Ardenvale, so we might activate it sometimes. Then lastly, for the enchantments, Rabble Rousing. Super powerful card here. 4 and a white for an enchantment. It has Hideaway 5, which means you look at the top 5 cards of your deck. You put one of them under it. And then when you attack with, 10? 10 or more creatures, you get to play the card without paying its mana cost. And then whenever you attack with 1 or more creatures, you make that many 1/1 green and white citizen creature tokens. And you just get to keep them. Very powerful token generating engine. Also gets you your card back in the form of Hideaway eventually. So yeah, just super powerful. Okay, sorry about that detour. Back to the spells we have. So non-budget cards. We also have Birds of Paradise. Like I said, I like Mana Dorks, but I don't want just like a Elvish Mystic or whatever. I do want them to kind of fix. There might be a world where the creature, because I don't want to like all in on the board. I'm already going to commit so much to the board. And the only ones that I can reliably protect on my commander are tokens. So I don't really want to run too many Mana Dorks, even though I think they're powerful. But I think like Avacyn's Pilgrim and Birds of Paradise are probably worth it in this deck. But Avacyn's Pilgrim's cheap and Birds of Paradise is not. So that's why one of them is in the deck and not both. Cathar Commando, just a card I love. That's just really good interaction. Just a card that you could realistically fit in the deck pretty reliably if you wanted to. Craterhoof Behemoth. Obviously, just an insanely powerful finisher. Kills people really well. This seems like a pretty easy swap for Endray's Forerunners if you wanted to make the swap. But yeah, just kills everybody all the time. Eldamri's Call. Just a good creature tutor here. Yeah, just a bit over $10, so I didn't think it was worth the include. Elish Norn. Obviously very powerful in a go-wide deck. Clears the way for your tokens to get in and makes all of your tokens huge. So, really good finisher here. Just too expensive for the list. Esper Sentinel. We're playing white, so we'd play Esper Sentinel if we can. Finale of Glory. Just kind of makes a lot of creature tokens for a lot of mana. However, I don't really feel like I need this. As we have lots of ways to spend our mana already, I don't really want this card just like sitting there and rotting in my hand. One nice thing, though, I will say about this card, why if you want to include it, I could see it, is that we always have things to do with our mana. So we can just kind of sit there and hold this in our hand forever until we get in a bad way. or we want to close the game, and then we could just dump all of our mana into this and get the giant number of 2/2s and angels and stuff like that. And then if we have crashing drawbridge out, we can kind of wombo combo our opponents and just kill people out of nowhere. So there's that cute synergy, but I decided to end up cutting it. I wasn't too thrilled with it. Flawless Maneuver. If we have our commander out, it's a free, make all of our creatures indestructible. Obviously powerful, but obviously expensive. Gallow Greeters. This is another budget one that I could see, but I ended up cutting it. I wasn't sold on it. It's 1 and a green for a 1/1 Elf Druid. When our creature is battlefield under your control, you choose one that hasn't been chosen. You either put a 1/1 counter on this, create a tap treasure token, or you gain 2 life. We can basically always trigger this once a turn, so the mode I'm basically always most interested in is making a tap treasure token. But being able to grow this and gain some life is nice. So yeah, I could definitely see this card, but I don't know. I just wasn't sold on it. I felt like we had better things to do. Growing Rites of Itlimoc. It can look at the top 4 cards of your library to put a creature into your hand, and then it flips into a Gaia's Cradle whenever you have 4 more creatures at your end step. So obviously insanely powerful deck, but just expensive. Hero of the Bladehold. This one's kind of a pet card of mine. Just makes a ton of creature tokens, makes all your creature tokens bigger when it attacks. This one may not be worth including anyway, even though it's expensive, but I wanted to mention it here because I love the card and I think it's powerful in the deck too. So good card here. Heroic Intervention, obvious staple of the format, protects your board very well for only 2 mana at instant speed, but just a bit expensive for the deck. Audric Master Tactician. This is traditionally a very good one for sort of go wide decks, but you have to have keywords out there, and as it stands, you get to choose how people block and stuff. The other Audric, the one that you choose keywords with as well, is also good. But yeah, this one seems like it's one that we could pretty reliably trigger, but I don't know. I just didn't really feel like we need it. Once we start attacking with our tokens and stuff, we don't care how they block because they're just going to die. We have plenty of other ways to do evasion than this Audric. And then the other Audric can also offer evasion, as well as extra things like lifelink and first strike and stuff like that. But we don't have enough keywords for that one. And this one, it doesn't feel like we have that we even need it. Just 4 mana is a bit expensive for this effect for what we can do. I feel like we just have better things to do and better ways of evasion for our creatures when we want to make that happen. Parallel Lives, obviously we're tokens deck, so if you can put it in your deck, do it. Teferi's Protection, one of the best board protections, if not the best board protection in the format. Just expensive, so didn't make the list. So yeah, these are cards. It seemed if you look at the list very long, you can tell probably what these were previously, or what I swapped them in for, as far as like Elish Norn and, like I said, Crater Hoof, and the board wipe protection spells. You would just take out the worst ones like Unbreakable Formation and Rootborn Defenses and such. So there's some modularity here, if that's a word. I'm gonna make it up right now. You can change this deck to your liking if you have some of these cards lying around and you're interested in building the deck. Don't be afraid to flex in some of these cards. I wanted to make this deck like more accessible by making it budget, obviously. So a lot of these cards you'll have lying around or can easily trade for. Most of this deck you can find in trade binders and stuff. But if you do have some of the bigger, more powerful stuff like you see in my sideboard here, then obviously throw that in. Okay, so like I did in the last video, what I'm starting to do here is do kind of some sampling hands and talk with you at least as far as when you're getting started for this deck, what you want to look for, and kind of go through with what I would come up with a general game plan. So let's look at our first hand here. This one seems like just a perfectly reasonable hand. Got 3 lands, got some fixing, got both colors, got some things to do. I got ramp on turn 2. I got some interaction if I need it. Got a big token producer, got an anthem. We can cast our commander easily. We'll draw a few cards here and see what we're going to get. So we even get to draw a 1-mana dork on our first turn. That's amazing. We also get some more mana ramp, and this Strixhaven Stadium is going to pair well with this Secure the Wastes and such. So yeah, this game's looking pretty good for us. We even get some late game here with Legion Loyalty. So yeah, feeling pretty good about that hand in that game. That's kind of what I'm looking at here. Next hand, this one I'm not so keen on. I don't have anything really to do for turn 1 and 2. So this is not typically a hand I would keep. It's got good interaction in the form of Swords to Plowshares and Rex Sage. Rabble Rousing is a good token generator, and Shamanic Revelation is good card draw, but they both require us to have a board, which this hand doesn't give us any sort of way to make a board. We don't want to use our commander to make a board. We want to use it when we run out of things to do. But we'll see what a couple cards we would have drawn are. Yeah, we wouldn't have really got rewarded. Nothing to do turn 1 and 2s. Feels pretty bad. Next hand. This one is kind of same thing as the last. Not a hand I would probably keep. Got a few tap lands in it, which are decent to do on turns 1 and 2. So that's not bad, but we just don't really have a whole lot going on. The Mentor, the Meek, and Adeline do pair up pretty well here, so I could see keeping it in that regard, but it seems a little risky. If either of these get removed, then we're kind of SOL. So I wouldn't keep this hand. This hand seems... yeah, I probably wouldn't keep this hand either. We do have 3 lands here, since this Balagad Recovery can be a land. But yeah, I don't really see a whole lot going on here. Okay, this is definitely a hand that I could see. Even though we only got 2 lands, we have a Forest Deek and a Strixhaven Stadium, so we can still get our mana right. Gives us some. We still have some things to do early game here. We can refill our hand with this Beast Whisper and Shamanic Revelation. We have token generators with Maya, so we got a good hand here. Hopefully we just draw into a land or 2. Yeah, this hand looks great. We draw 2 lands and then a Welcoming Vampire the next few turns. Yeah, so this game's going to play out very well for us. We're going to have a nice smooth game here, get card draw flowing consistently, token generation, ramp. We got the whole 9 going here with this hand. And then this will be the last hand that I talk about. I like this hand. I think this hand's fine. So we got the Avacyn's Pilgrim here. We got turn 1 mana ramp. So I would go Forest, Avacyn's Pilgrim. Turn 2, I would play the Mirrored Landscape and then play Cryptolith Fragment to set up for later. And then turn 3, I would probably go Plains. No, I'd probably play the tap land, then either play like our commander, maybe crack the Mirrored Landscape. If we're real desperate, we can play the Rex Sage. Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm looking at for this deck. Hopefully that helps you give an idea of what sort of hands you should be looking for, what sort of game plan you're looking to get early game and such. Yeah, that's the deck. It's King Darien 48, new card from Dominaria United. Super sick tokens matters commander. If you like the idea of building sort of a budget deck, I might do some like a special budget series on Budget Brews or something maybe, instead of just normal Brews Day. Let me know what you think. I like the idea. I like building on restrictions, so that's what I think is awesome about Commander's restrictions. So if you like the video, do all the normal algorithm stuff, like, comment, sub. Thanks for tuning in. Y'all have a great afternoon. Love y'all.